Imagine this. It's late. The kind of late where the silence hums louder than any voice. You sit across from the man you love, his eyes tired. Not from the day, but from something deeper. A sentence has just left your mouth, sharp and unthinking. You didn't mean it like that. But his jaw tightens slightly. His eyes look away. And then nothing. No fight. No tears. Just distance. A quiet pulling away that feels like the beginning of an ending. You won't even notice until it's too late. Now imagine this. The moment wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no betrayal. Just a few words. A sentence. A string of syllables that seemed harmless, maybe even deserved. But it cut deeper than you'll ever know. We talk often about what men do, how they act, where they fail, what they should change. But rarely, so rarely, do we talk about what they feel, especially when it comes to love. Even more so, when it comes to the words spoken by the person they trust most. Have you ever wondered how many men silently break because of something said in love? How many suffer in silence, not from violence or neglect, but from the cold cruelty of careless words? He won't tell you, not because he doesn't want to, but because he's been trained not to. Conditioned to absorb pain like a sponge, to filter it before it ever spills over. But the sponge becomes heavy, the silence becomes loud, and eventually, the man becomes numb. And here's the paradox. The person you love the most is also the one most capable of damaging you in the smallest of ways. Because it's not the insult from a stranger that wounds. It's the subtle dismissal from the one who swore they saw your soul. Words that seem small on the surface can become splinters in a man's psyche. Not because he is fragile, but because he feels deeply in ways he was never taught to articulate. Because your voice, the one voice that he lets inside, carries weight, meaning identity. So when that voice turns cold, critical, or careless, it doesn't just sting. It redefines him. Why is it that in relationships, we so often speak with more tenderness to friends than to our partners? Why do we give more grace to strangers than to the man who lies beside us at night? Vulnerable, hoping to be seen? And what if the very things you say in moments of stress, sarcasm, or frustration are not just temporary slips, but emotional knives that slice silently into his self-worth? This isn't about censorship. It's not about walking on eggshells or overprotecting a man's ego. No, it's about something far more vital, consciousness. About recognizing that the way we use language in love is either a bridge or a weapon. So here is the truth that most relationship advice will never tell you. Love is not just in how you feel, it's in how you speak. And men remember, not the dramatic fights, necessarily, but the words, the exact words. They echo, long after the moment has passed. They reshape how he sees himself in your eyes. So the question is not, did you mean it? The real question is, did he believe it? There are 6 sentences, 6 phrases that may seem harmless, even justified in certain moments. But they are among the most damaging things you can say to a man you love. Not because they're obviously cruel, but because they dig at the quiet parts of him he doesn't know how to defend. But before we name them, you must ask yourself, when was the last time you looked at the man you love not through the lens of what he provides or fails to provide, but through the aching mystery of his hidden battles? What does it mean to love someone who doesn't know how to ask for protection? And what if your words are the shield he never got to hold? Because here's the secret no one talks about. Men don't want to be invincible. They just want to be safe with you. So, what are these 6 seemingly innocent phrases that erode that safety, drop by drop, word by word? We'll begin with number 1. But know this, these aren't just tips. They are warnings. Emotional red flags disguised as everyday speech. By the time we reach the 6th, you may realize that love is not just in what you give, but in what you choose never to take away. Number 1 is coming next. And it's one you've probably said without ever realizing the damage it caused. But before we go there, ask yourself one more thing. If words can build a man, what kind of man are your words building? Now, let's look deeper. Let's go back to the silence. The silence after you said something sharp, not because you wanted to wound him, but because you were hurting too. Maybe you were tired, overwhelmed, unheard. Maybe you didn't even mean it, but it came out anyway. You never change. Or you're just like your father. Or worse, you're not enough for me anymore. He didn't respond. Or maybe he smiled and changed the subject. But something shifted. The light in him dimmed just a little. Why? Why do certain phrases cut so deeply into a man's identity, especially when they come from someone he trusts? To understand this, we need to look beneath the surface, not into romance novels or pop psychology, but into the tangled roots of human consciousness, into the places where shame, pride, fear, and identity collide. Carl Jung wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." For men, that burden often transforms into a mask, a persona crafted not from who they truly are, but from who they think they must be. From an early age, most boys are taught, whether through words or silence, that emotions are dangerous. Vulnerability is weakness. Sensitivity is shameful. A real man, they're told, must be strong, stoic, reliable, and above all, invulnerable. But what happens when that man falls in love? When he lets someone in? Suddenly, the fortress has a doorway, and the person he loves most now holds the keys to his most private fears. This is where it gets complicated. When you say, "You never do anything right," he doesn't hear a comment about the laundry or the dishes. He hears confirmation of a lifelong fear that he is, at his core, inadequate. When you say, "You're too sensitive," he doesn't hear a reflection of his mood. He hears a verdict that his attempt to be emotionally present is now a liability. These aren't just emotional reactions. These are psychic injuries, and most of them trace back to something deeper than the relationship. They come from the hidden war inside him. Think of Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of the will to power, not just the desire to dominate others, but the deeper need to assert meaning in a chaotic world. For many men, love is the place where they hope to find that meaning. But when love becomes a battlefield of criticism, sarcasm, and unmet expectations, that hope is shattered. And in its place, shame, silent shame. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that human suffering came from desire, and perhaps, no desire is more powerful than the need to be seen, not for your achievements or your strength, but for your essence. That raw, unprotected self behind the roles and masks. So when a man hears words that negate that essence, even in small, offhand moments, he experiences what Viktor Frankl called existential frustration, the deep, aching sense that he is not living a life that matters to those he loves most. Here's the hidden problem. In most modern relationships, we're told that communication is key, but what no one says is this: words are only healing when they come from understanding. Without that understanding, words become noise. Or worse, they become weapons. You can't tell a man to be open and then punish him when he does. You can't ask him to share and then mock or minimize what he gives. You can't beg for depth and then abandon him the moment his shadows show. The truth is, many women are taught to express emotion openly, while many men are conditioned to suppress it. And then, in relationships, we expect those different emotional languages to seamlessly translate. They don't. Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Hell is other people." But perhaps, hell is not other people. It's being misunderstood by the person you love, and feeling like explaining yourself would only make it worse. So what happens? Men retreat. They pull back, not out of indifference, but as a defense. Because what is the point of opening a wound if no one intends to tend to it? Here's where the cycle becomes dangerous. 1. A woman feels unheard or emotionally unsupported. 2. She expresses that in frustration, sometimes with words that wound. 3. The man internalizes it as shame and inadequacy. 4. He retreats, becomes distant or avoidant. 5. She interprets the distance as indifference or emotional immaturity. 6. She pushes harder. 7. He shuts down more. And so, the cycle spins until what began as love becomes a war of unmet needs and unspoken pain. But here's the most tragic part. Neither person is the villain. Both are hurting. Both want connection. But neither knows how to navigate the emotional landmines left by a culture that never taught us how to love consciously. So what can we do? We begin by realizing that the words we say in love are not just reactions. They are reflections of how deeply we understand the human condition. Because to truly love someone is to study them, to know their wounds, to learn their emotional dialect, and to speak to them not from your frustration, but from your reverence. You cannot love someone well until you understand what love means to them. And for many men, love is not in the grand gestures. It's in the safety of your words, in the way you speak to him when he feels small, lost, or unsure. In your voice, he either finds sanctuary or exile. We're about to reveal the 6 things you should never say to a man you love. But understand, this is not about manipulation or walking on eggshells. It's about wielding the power you already have, the power of your voice, your words, your awareness, with wisdom. Because if he is going to love you with everything he has, he needs to know he is safe from the one thing that hurts him more than any failure: your rejection. And rejection, in a man's world, often doesn't come through slamming doors or final goodbyes. It comes in the quiet cruelty of everyday language. The sigh, the jab, the sarcastic joke, the you always and you never that echo like gongs in the caverns of his soul. Next, we'll begin the journey into the 6 phrases. We'll start with number 1, perhaps the most common and the most misunderstood. And it might just be one you said last week, without even knowing. Now picture this. It's been weeks since that conversation. No fight followed. No open wound. No grand apology. Just space. You've noticed he's quieter. He goes to bed earlier. Spends more time on his phone. Talks less. Laughs less. But you dismiss it. Life gets busy. Stress happens. He's probably just tired. But here's what you don't see. That one sentence, the one you barely remember saying, has turned into a loop in his mind. You're not ambitious enough. Why can't you be more like him? You always disappoint me. It replays in silence. Not because he wants it to, but because his brain, wired by evolution to detect threats to his identity, can't let it go. This is the unseen consequence. Not just that he heard you, but that his nervous system did too. And now, in his body, your words are not a memory. They are a message. You see, the brain doesn't treat emotional wounds like abstract ideas. It treats them like danger. According to neuroscience, the brain processes social pain, like rejection or humiliation, through the same neural circuits that process physical pain. That means when you say something that cuts him at the core, it's not just hurt feelings. It's neurological injury. The amygdala flares. Cortisol floods. The brain goes into defense mode. And here's the paradox. He may look calm, emotionless, unaffected, but inside, his system is burning. Why does this matter? Because when emotional injury becomes internalized and unspoken, it doesn't disappear, it mutates. It shifts into chronic patterns, emotional withdrawal, resentment, apathy, even depression. The tragedy? Most women don't realize they're watching their man quietly unravel until it's already happened. Let's get even deeper. Have you ever noticed how some men seem to shut down after repeated conflict? How they stop fighting, Stop reacting. Stop showing up emotionally. That's not a sign of indifference. It's a form of learned helplessness. In psychology, learned helplessness occurs when a person, after repeated experiences of pain they can't escape, eventually stops trying altogether, even when escape is possible. For a man in a relationship, this can look like not responding when criticized, avoiding important conversations, agreeing to things he doesn't believe in, withdrawing affection, losing motivation in life altogether. And the worst part? He often doesn't even know why. Because the injury was subtle. A sentence here, a tone there, a joke in front of friends, a comparison to someone else. And eventually, he begins to believe it. He begins to become it. This is how words shape identity. Over time, his self-perception shifts. He stops seeing himself as powerful, capable, or worthy, and instead sees himself through the distorted mirror of your disappointment. Now pause. Ask yourself, have I ever used sarcasm or criticism to get a man to change? Have I ever said something out of anger and thought, he'll get over it? Have I ever confused honesty with cruelty? It's not about blame. It's about awareness. Because without awareness, we end up feeding the very behaviors we hate. The irony is cruel. We criticize him for shutting down, without realizing we may have taught him it's not safe to stay open. But there's more. The consequences of unhealed emotional injury don't stay confined to the relationship. They leak into his work, where he stops taking risks, into his friendships, where he shows up less often, into his health, where he starts numbing with food, alcohol, screens, into his future, where he no longer dreams as boldly as he once did. All because a part of him, a part built from your words, told him he was not enough. You see, a man doesn't just want your love. He wants to be seen by you, to be chosen, not as a finished product, but as a becoming, to be trusted with your truth, yes, but also your tenderness. And when that disappears, even subtly, it's like emotional suffocation, not a scream, but a slow closing of the throat. Now imagine this. What if the most devastating moment of his life wasn't a betrayal or a loss, but the slow erosion of his spirit, caused not by your absence, but by your words? That's the power of language. It doesn't just describe reality, it creates it. So when you say, "You'll never change," you're not describing him. You're casting a spell on him. You're offering him a narrative to live by, one of failure, futility, and shame. And the longer that story repeats, the more it calcifies, until even he begins to believe, this is who I am. This is not a man problem or a woman problem. This is a human problem rooted in one universal truth. We are all fragile in the place we most want to be loved. So what now? Now we look at the rebellion, the radical alternative to criticism disguised as communication. Because the solution is not silence, nor is it blind positivity. The solution is conscious speech, words that are precise, rooted in awareness, and aimed at growth, not shame. You're about to learn how to wield that power, not as a manipulator, not as a rescuer, but as a mirror, one who reflects the truth of a man's, becoming back to him with love. In next section, we will begin the rebellion. We'll look at how to break free from these unconscious patterns, how to reclaim your voice as a builder, not a breaker. And most importantly, we'll finally name number 1, the first of the 6 things you should never say to a man you love. And once you hear it, you'll never speak the same way again. But before we go forward, if you found any part of this message stirring, painful, or illuminating, take a moment now to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to yourself, to a higher version of love, to the possibility that words can become wings and not wounds. Now take a breath. Not the kind that slips past your lips unnoticed, but the kind that feels like surrender. The kind that says, something has to change. Because by now, maybe you've realized what so few people dare to admit out loud. We are never more powerful than when someone trusts us with their emotional nakedness, and never more dangerous than when we don't know how to handle it. If you've ever looked into the eyes of the man you love and seen the quiet ache there, the one he hides behind humor, or silence, or a sudden change of subject, you know the truth already. Something we're doing isn't working. But here's the liberating paradox. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be conscious. This is the rebellion, not against men, not against women, but against the unconscious scripts we inherited from generations that taught us how to perform love, but not how to practice it. And rebellion starts with the first thing you should never say to a man you love. Number 1, you're not a real man. Maybe you've said it outright. Maybe it came in disguise. Man up. A real man would. Why can't you just be strong for once? It may have come from frustration, from heartbreak, from a place of needing him to show up differently. But here's what you need to know. This sentence is not criticism, it is annihilation. Because unlike other insults, this one doesn't attack what he's done. It attacks what he is. There is no way to defend against it without sacrificing self-respect. It's a corner with no exit, a judgment that touches the deepest shame any man carries, the fear that he is not enough of what the world demands him to be. But what is a real man? Ask 10 people and you'll get 10 answers. Strong, stoic, protective, gentle, provider, fighter, romantic, ruthless, noble. The definitions contradict. The expectations clash. The pressure crushes. He is asked to cry, but not too much. Be vulnerable, but still masculine. Be successful, but never show that he's struggling. Be emotionally available, but never emotionally dependent. And when the woman he loves turns and says, "You're not a real man," in whatever form that takes, it is not just a rejection of behavior. It is the withdrawal of existential legitimacy. You don't just reject him, you reject his right to be. So how do we break free from this? We must tear down the myth. The myth that strength is singular, that manhood is a performance, that there is one right way to be masculine. This begins with a revolution in language. Instead of saying, "You're not a real man," say, "When you shut down, I feel abandoned, and I need you here with me." Instead of, "You're too sensitive," say, "I didn't expect that to hurt you. Help me understand what's behind it." Instead of, "You never do anything right," say, "This keeps happening and I don't know how to fix it. Can we figure it out together?" Notice the difference? One speaks from powerlessness, the other from partnership. One tries to shame him into change. The other invites him into a co-created future. Because real love is not power over, it's power with. Aldous Huxley once wrote, "Words can be like X-rays. If you use them properly, they'll go through anything." And your words do go through him, more than you know. But the rebellion is not just in changing how you speak. It's in changing what you believe. If you believe that your voice has the power to shape his self-perception, then every sentence becomes sacred. Every conversation becomes a ceremony. Every moment of frustration becomes a portal to something deeper, if you're brave enough to look through it. But what does he need from you? Not submission, not silence. What he needs is witnessing. To be seen not just as useful, or stable, or strong, but as human, as becoming. To be reminded that masculinity is not a mask, it's a story, and he gets to write it. With you, not for you. This rebellion is radical because it disrupts the most entrenched lie in modern love. That if someone hurts you, the best way to protect yourself is to hurt them back. But real power isn't found in retaliation. Real power is found in restraint, in choosing tenderness when every bone in your body wants to scream, in using your words not as revenge, but as revelation. So what happens when you stop saying, "You're not a real man"? He begins to heal in ways you'll never fully see. He starts to take emotional risks, knowing he won't be emasculated for it. He begins to show up, not just for you, but for himself. He builds confidence not from pretending to be invulnerable, but from knowing he is valued, even in his rawness. And your relationship? It deepens, not into something more dramatic or passionate, but something safe. And safety is where passion grows wild. Because here's the secret. A man who feels safe becomes a man who is fearless, and not in the world, but in love. He will speak more, risk more, love more. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. And that is what you've been wanting all along, isn't it? We've only begun. There are 5 more phrases you should never say to a man you love. And each one holds a mirror, not just to his wounds, but to yours. In the next part, we'll dive into number 2. It's the one that seems most reasonable, and yet causes more silent resentment than any other. But remember, this isn't just about him. It's about you becoming the kind of lover who doesn't just want to be heard, but who knows how to heal. Are you ready? Imagine this. You're lying beside him in the dark. No words, just breath. His back is to you. He's not angry, not cold, just far away. You feel it, the weight between you. A silence swollen with things never said and wounds never named. You remember the words. They left your mouth weeks ago, maybe even months. But they still linger in the space between. Your body's like a ghost that won't leave. And now here you are, still in love, still unsure, still wondering how something so small could have created such a deep rift. But now let's turn the mirror around. Because this is where everything changes. Not by changing him, not by forcing apologies, but by finally understanding why you said those words in the first place. Let's confront the deepest truth. The way you speak to a man is a reflection of the way you speak to yourself. And many of the things we say in love, especially the harshest ones, are not really about the other person at all. They are echoes of childhood wounds, of past betrayals, of fathers who left, or mothers who never said, "I'm proud of you." Echoes of ex-lovers who made you feel invisible. Echoes of the parts of yourself you still believe are unworthy, unlovable, unimportant. Here is the ultimate truth. You do not hurt others from your power. You hurt them from your pain. And when that pain goes unexamined, it hijacks your mouth. Suddenly, you're not speaking from the woman. You are now, but from the girl who was once abandoned, betrayed, or ignored. And that girl doesn't want to understand him. She wants to be heard. She wants to be chosen. She wants to know someone will stay. But instead of saying, "I'm scared you'll leave me like they did," you say, "You never show up for me." Instead of saying, "I need to feel safe with you," you say, "You're too much, too emotional, too weak." Because vulnerability is terrifying, so we cover it with criticism. We build walls of language around our softest parts, and then wonder why no one gets in. But now, you see it. And now, you can choose differently. Because the greatest rebellion is not changing how you speak to him. It's changing how you speak to yourself. It's asking, why do I lash out when I feel unseen? Why do I try to control when I feel out of control inside? What am I really trying to say underneath the anger? It's unlearning the belief that love must be earned through performance or perfection. It's realizing that your worth is not tied to how well he responds, but how deeply you've rooted yourself in truth. And from that place, from that sacred ground, your words transform. You stop using them to protect your wounds and start using them to connect. This is the final, most powerful realization. The words you say to a man you love don't just shape him, they reveal you. And when you speak with awareness, with softness, with integrity, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard, you become not just a lover. You become a lighthouse, a guide through emotional storms, a safe harbor when the world demands him to be hard and hollow, a place where he can be something he has never been allowed to be. Whole, not perfect, not always right, not always strong, but real. And in return, you receive something just as sacred. A man who stops performing, a man who stops pretending, a man who doesn't just love you, he trusts you. And trust is deeper than affection, deeper than attraction, deeper than chemistry. Trust is the foundation of forever. So what now? Now you return to the 6 things you should never say to a man you love, not as rules, but as reflections, because each one tells a story. 1. You're not a real man. The story of shame. 2. You always disappoint me. The story of unmet expectations we haven't yet learned to express with grace. 3. You're just like your father. The story of inherited pain we project instead of healing. 4. You never listen. The story of wanting to be seen without knowing how to ask. 5. Why can't you be more like? The story of comparison stealing the intimacy of the present. 6. Maybe I'd be happier alone. The story of fear disguised as independence. Each of these phrases is a signal, a flare shot from the subconscious, not about who he is, but about what still lives inside you. So now, you begin the real work, the inner revolution, the language purification, the choice to make love not just a feeling, but a practice. Because in the end, the words you choose are the world you create. And if you want a relationship built on trust, depth, passion, and freedom, you must speak like a creator, not a critic. You must become fluent in the language of healing, because words are not just sounds, they are spells. And you, beloved, are the spellcaster. Now close your eyes. Think of the man you love, not who you wish he was, but who he is, right now, imperfect, trying, carrying things you'll never fully understand. And ask yourself, what would it sound like if my words became a mirror where he could finally see himself, not through the eyes of his fears, but through the eyes of my love? Then speak that, because that is how you change a man without ever forcing him to change. That is how you love him awake.